Chosen one, let me describe where you are. You are tired in a way that sleep has not fixed. You are faithful in ways that no one has noticed, including, sometimes, yourself. You moved through today carrying something heavy and quiet, and you did the small things anyway. You said the hard yes or the necessary no. You held something together that wanted to fall apart. You kept going in a direction that has not given you much visible confirmation that it is even working. And in that ordinary, unremarkable middle of your life, something moved. I know that may sound like something you have been told before, and I understand if part of you braces for another promise that dissolves. So I want to say something before we go any further. Stay with me through this entire message, because by the time we reach the end, you are going to walk away with 3 things you did not have when you arrived. You will know exactly what kind of moment activates a response from heaven. You will understand why you could not feel it when it happened. And you will have something practical, something you can hold and use starting today. Every layer builds on the one before it, and the final one is the one that changes everything. Do not skip ahead. Now, let me show you the pattern. I cannot tell you what your future holds. I will not pretend I know the timeline. What I can tell you is something far more reliable than a timeline. It is a pattern, one of the most consistent patterns in the entire record of human transformation, and when you see it clearly, today will look completely different to you. The pattern is this: the most significant activations in a person's life never feel significant when they happen. They feel small. They feel quiet. They feel like one more moment in a very long line of moments that have not added up to anything yet. And because they do not announce themselves, most people walk right through them and never know what they just set in motion. Think about a seed. The seed does not know which morning the light finally broke through the soil. It simply begins to move. And from that moment, everything, the root, the direction, the reach of every future branch, reorganizes around a new center. Something has begun to move in you. You do not know it yet. But by the time we are done here, you will. Let me start with the first truth. And this one, if you are honest with yourself, some part of you already knows. You have just never been given full permission to believe it. Ordinary faithfulness carries extraordinary spiritual weight. I am not talking about the grand gesture. I am not talking about the moment everyone was watching. I am talking about what you did when no one was watching, including yourself. And I want to walk you through what those moments actually look like, because I think you will recognize yourself in more than one of them from today alone. The first kind of activation moment is when you chose to show up when hiding would have been easier. You know those days. The ones where everything in you wanted to stay back, stay small, stay silent, and you did not. You showed up anyway. You answered anyway. You stayed in the room anyway, even when the room was hard. That choice, that quiet, unglamorous choice, carries more weight than you have ever been told. The second kind is the prayer said with doubt, still in the room. Not the clean, confident prayer. The one where you were not sure anyone was listening, but you spoke anyway because something in you could not stay silent. That kind of prayer, offered from a cracked and tired place, has a reach that polished prayers sometimes do not. The rawness of it is what makes it land. The third kind is a word spoken to someone who needed it, at cost to yourself. Maybe it was an honest word. Maybe it was a kind one, offered in a moment when you had every right to be cold. Maybe it was the moment you stayed for someone else when you were the one who needed staying for. That seed of selflessness planted in dry ground is registered somewhere beyond what your eyes can see. The fourth kind is a boundary held against pressure. The moment you said no when every social instinct said yes. The moment you protected something inside yourself from something that would have taken it. That kind of firmness, when it is grounded in who you are rather than what you fear, is a form of faithfulness to your own calling. The fifth kind is the decision to believe when the evidence was thin, not blind denial of reality, but the quiet choice to hold the door open just a little longer. to not fully close off the possibility that things could still change. That choice is not weakness. That is one of the hardest and most powerful things a human being can do. The sixth kind is a moment of releasing control instead of grasping. The moment you finally exhaled, when you stopped trying to force the outcome and let something else hold it for a while. When you admitted you did not know and you asked for help. That surrender, when it comes from trust rather than defeat, moves things. And the seventh kind, and perhaps the most overlooked of all, is simply continuing, not with triumph, not with certainty, but with tired, consistent, day after day faithfulness that does not make headlines and does not get applauded and does not even feel like a spiritual act most of the time. That is the one that tends to be the turning point. You may have had one of those today. You may have had 3. Now let me show you this pattern from the inside, because it is ancient and it is consistent, and once you see it, you will never unsee it. There is a man I want you to think about. He was not free. He was not celebrated. He was in a prison cell on the wrong side of a country that was not his, and everything that had been promised to him looked like it had dissolved into dust years ago. His name was Joseph. One day in that cell, 2 men told him their dreams. He could have said nothing. He could have turned inward, the way long-suffering sometimes teaches us to do. But he did not. He listened. He interpreted. He helped 2 strangers with a gift he had been given, in a moment when helping them gave him nothing in return, except one small request. Remember me when you get out. He was not remembered for 2 more years. And here is what I need you to hold on to. The activation did not happen when he was released. The activation happened in that cell. The moment he chose to serve with his gift in the dark, when there was no visible audience and no obvious reward, that was the moment the sequence began. He walked back to his corner of that cell with no fanfare, no sign, no confirmation, just the quiet act, done. And 2 years later, when the cupbearer finally remembered, the path to the palace opened in a single morning. This is not coincidence. This is the pattern. And here is where I want to pause on this first truth, because what I have just shown you would be enough for one message. But there is a second layer that lives just beneath this one, and it answers the question you are probably already asking yourself. If these activations are real, why can we not feel them when they happen? Why does it all feel so silent, so ordinary, so like nothing? Stay with me, because this next layer is where most people lose their peace, and I do not want you to lose yours any longer. The silence between activation and evidence is not absence, it is architecture. Most of us, if we are honest, have been quietly carrying a fear that the silence means no. That when we pray and do not hear back, when we act faithfully and see no result, when we do everything we are supposed to do and the evidence simply does not come, the fear underneath all of it is that we were wrong. That the door is not coming, that we missed something, or that we are simply not the kind of person these things happen for. I want to speak directly to that fear, not to dismiss it, because it makes complete sense that you feel it. You have been carrying a heavy season for longer than you planned for, and repeated disappointment does something to a person. It trains you to protect yourself by lowering your expectations. And after a while, that protection starts to look like realism, and the realism starts to close off the very receptivity that would allow you to receive what has already been released over your life. You did not choose to close. You learned to survive. There is a difference, but here is the truth about the silence. When a seed cracks underground, there is no sound. Nothing visible changes above the surface. The soil looks exactly the same as it did yesterday. And if you were watching that patch of ground, and you only trusted what your eyes could see, you would conclude nothing was happening. You might give up on it. You might walk away. But underground, everything is moving. The crack has happened. The root is reaching. The whole orientation of that living thing has changed direction, and all of it is invisible to anyone standing above. That is what the silence between your activation and your evidence actually is. It is not no. It is not abandonment. It is the invisible work of the thing that has already begun. Esther stood in a corridor, and she was terrified. She had made a decision that could cost her everything, and she was walking toward it anyway, with shaking hands and a practiced face, and words she had rehearsed through the entire night, because if she got them wrong, there would be no second chance. She did not feel the activation. She felt fear. She walked forward anyway, and that single act, taken from a place of terror rather than certainty, from trembling rather than triumph, became the turning point for an entire people. Not because she was the most powerful person in the building, but because she moved toward the thing that was hers to do, even without a guarantee. Activation does not require certainty. It does not require you to feel ready, or worthy, or sure. It only requires movement. One step in the direction of what is yours, even when everything in you is unsure. You took a step like that today. Now let me give you something practical, because wisdom is only fully received when it becomes something you can hold. There are 3 signals that tend to appear when an activation has occurred, not as proof, because the invisible does not always send proof, but as indicators that something is aligning. The first is an unexplained peace in the middle of difficulty, not the absence of hard things, but a strange, quiet steadiness underneath the hardness, like something has been settled even though the surface has not cleared. If you have felt that recently, even briefly, even once, pay close attention to it. The second signal is when a word or a sentence lands differently than it used to. You have heard the same piece of wisdom 100 times, and then one day you hear it, and something in your chest responds as if it is the first time. Something opens that was closed before. That is not coincidence. That is receptivity meeting the moment it was designed for. The third signal is a sudden clarity about something that has been foggy for a long time. Not the whole picture, just one step, one decision that has been sitting unresolved for weeks, and then, one morning, you simply know. Not because the circumstances changed, but because something inside you settled. These are the signs that the architecture is taking shape underground. Now, I want to share something that sits at the intersection of what ancient wisdom has always taught and what modern neuroscience is only beginning to confirm, because I think it matters to what you are walking into. There is a frequency of the brain called gamma. It is the brainwave most closely associated with intuition, with insight, with that quality of deep clarity that lets you recognize a moment for what it actually is, rather than what it looks like on the surface. Scientists who have spent decades studying this frequency describe it as the brain's highest state of reception and integration. And what they have found maps remarkably onto what the oldest spiritual traditions have always described as the state of the person who can hear and receive and act from a place of genuine alignment. This frequency is not something foreign to you. It was placed in you before the world started its work on you. Children carry gamma in abundance. It is the reason a child can learn with such startling speed and wonder and respond to the world with such open perception. But something happens over time. The pace, the noise, the chronic stress of a season like the one you have been in, all of this quiets the gamma, layer by layer, year by year. Neuroscientists call it the decline effect. What it means in plain language is that the brain you need in order to recognize and receive what heaven is releasing, that brain has been gradually quieted by the very weight of what you have been carrying. This is not your fault. It is what the pressure does. But here is the thing about something that was placed in you at the beginning. It can be restored. Dr. Robert Lake is a neuroscientist with more than 30 years of research into brain entrainment. He has spent years studying how specific sound frequencies can guide the brain back into gamma, not by adding something foreign, but by reminding the brain of a frequency it has always known. The technology he developed is called the Genius Song. It is a 7-minute audio track listened to through headphones that uses precision sound engineering to guide the brain back toward the state of reception it was always designed for. I want to be very clear about what I am saying here and what I am not saying. What was activated today was activated before you ever heard of this. Heaven does not wait for a product to act. But here is the wisdom in this. If a door has been opened, and you want to be fully present to recognize and receive what is on the other side of it, having a brain that is operating at the frequency of reception is not spiritually shallow. It is preparation. It is the same wisdom that says, if you are expecting an important message, make sure the receiver is on. Some people in this community have been using the Genius Song as a daily support tool, not a replacement for the path, not a guarantee of any specific outcome, but a 7-minute daily practice that supports the kind of alertness and clarity their journey requires. Over 18,000 people have now used it, and what they describe consistently is not magic. It is a return to something they already had the capacity to notice, to receive, to act with the kind of intuitive clarity that the pressure of modern life had been slowly quieting. If you feel called to explore it, I have left the only link to the authentic version in the description and in the pinned comment below. I say this clearly. There are imitations. They carry the name but not the actual brain entrainment science. The only version with the full technology, the 4 bonuses, and the complete money-back guarantee is available only through the link I have placed there. Do not search elsewhere. But whether that is for you or not, there is a third layer to what I want to show you today. And this one is different from everything I have shown you so far. Because this one is not about your circumstances or your silence or your actions. This one is about a belief that has been working inside you, quietly and consistently, to disqualify you from exactly this kind of activation. And until you name it, it will keep working. Stay with me. That is where we are going next. Chosen one, the thing that has been working against you is not external. It is not the circumstances. It is not the people who did not see you. It is not even the timing that has felt so painfully delayed. It is a belief, a quiet, invisible one. And it sounds something like this. Something this significant does not happen to people like me. You may not say those exact words out loud. Most people do not. This belief lives further down than language. It lives in the quick dismissal of your own good moments. It was not that big a deal. Anyone would have done the same thing. I was just lucky. It lives in the way you hold good news at a slight distance, just enough to protect yourself from the disappointment of finding out later that it was not what it looked like. I want you to understand something about this belief before I go any further. It did not form because it was true. It formed because it was protective. At some point in your past, usually, long before you had the wisdom to examine it, you experienced what it felt like to hope for something and come back empty, to reach and not be reached back, to be the one who was overlooked or dismissed or simply not considered when the thing you were hoping for was handed to someone else. And your whole system, which was only ever trying to keep you safe, learned to lower the ceiling, learned to make you smaller in your own imagination before anyone else had the chance to. That is not weakness. That is a very human response to a very real kind of pain. But here is what that belief has cost you. Every time something significant was activated in your life, every time a door quietly opened, every time a small act of faithfulness carried more weight than you knew, the unworthiness belief was there, running in the background, editing the evidence, filtering out the signs, telling you it was probably nothing, probably not meant for you, probably too good to be true. It has not been keeping you safe. It has been keeping you small. And I want to tell you what the hardest seasons you have walked through were actually doing, because those seasons were not just difficult, they were precise. Something was being removed, not cruelly, but with the kind of accuracy that only makes sense when you can see from a distance. The season that felt like punishment was removing the part of you that needed other people's approval to feel worthy of your own calling. That part had to go, because where you are going, the applause does not always come first. Sometimes you have to walk into the room before anyone claps. You had to become someone who could do that. The wilderness taught you how. It was removing the performance-based sense of worth, the version of you that could only feel valuable when visible results were accumulating. That version of you would have taken credit for what was not yours to take, or would have stopped when the scoreboard slowed down. You needed to become someone who could stay faithful without the confirmation. You became that person. It was removing the small vision. The version of yourself that had quietly, without fully realizing it, shrunk the imagination of what was possible for your life to fit inside the boundaries of what had been proven possible so far. The ceiling that had been pressed down on you for so long that you started to call it the sky. These were not taken from you cruelly. They were removed with precision, because what has been activated in you requires a person who can carry it without collapsing, without performing, and without shrinking back the moment the weight of it becomes real. You have become that person, and I want to name who you actually are. Not who you are trying to become, not who you will be someday. Who you are right now, today, as a result of everything you have walked through. The first thing you are is a seer. A seer is someone who perceives what others walk past. You have been developing this gift, often without knowing it, through every season of waiting. Waiting teaches you to look more closely. Sitting in long silences teaches you to notice what the noisy room misses. Being the one who was overlooked teaches you to see the ones who are being overlooked. You have developed a capacity for perception that most people who have only lived in comfort simply do not have. You sense when something is shifting before anyone has the language for it. You notice the thread that connects things that look unrelated. That is not a personality quirk. That is a gift shaped by fire, and the world needs it. The second thing you are is a wounded healer. This means your pain has not been wasted. I know that is hard to receive when the pain is still recent, still tender. But there is a kind of healing that can only come from someone who has actually been inside the wound, not someone who studied it from the outside, not someone who read about it and can empathize in theory, but someone who knows it from the inside and came out the other side, still choosing to be open. The medicine you carry was made from what was done to you and from what you chose to do with it instead of letting it harden you. That medicine is real, and it will reach people that polished, untested words never could. The third thing you are is a cycle breaker. You are standing at the end of a very long line. Patterns that have moved through generations, through family systems, through environments, through the particular kind of wounding that repeats itself until someone finally stops repeating it. Those patterns stop with you, not because you declared it in a single moment of inspiration, but because of the choices you have made consistently in the ordinary and unglamorous middle of your life. Every time you responded differently than the pattern would have had you respond, every time you chose something better when the old way was easier, you were doing the work of a cycle breaker without anyone naming it. You are changing more than your own story. You are changing the story that comes after you. The fourth thing you are is a voice. Not someday, not when you are fully healed and have every answer and feel perfectly ready. Now. A voice is not someone without doubts. A voice is someone whose truth has been forged through enough that it carries weight when it speaks. You have something to say that the world genuinely needs, not because you are the loudest, but because you are one of the few who has actually been in the places your words will need to go. Your voice carries the weight of someone who has been through it and is still standing. That is irreplaceable. These are not identities you are trying to earn. They are identities you have already become. The question is only whether you will stop disqualifying yourself from them. And now, I want to take you to the deepest layer, the one underneath everything I have shown you so far, the one I have been building toward from the very first moment of this message. I showed you that ordinary actions carry extraordinary weight. I showed you that the silence between activation and evidence is not absence, it is architecture. I showed you the belief that has been quietly filtering out the evidence of what has already been released. And now I want to show you the truth that holds all of those truths together. It was not one specific action today that activated something. It was you. Let me say that again, because I need you to actually receive this. Heaven was not responding to a single transaction. It was not responding to the prayer specifically, or the boundary specifically, or the tired act of continuing specifically. Those things were all expressions of something larger. They were the way the deeper thing showed itself on the surface of your day. What heaven was responding to, what has been activated, is the person you have become. There is a principle that runs through every wisdom tradition I have ever studied, and it is this: who you are is a frequency, and the sacred does not primarily respond to what you do. It responds to who you are while you do it. It responds to the orientation of a life, the direction of a soul, the particular frequency of a person who has been through enough and held enough and chosen faithfully enough that their whole being has become something worth responding to. That is you. Think about Joseph one more time. What was it that finally opened the path to the palace? Was it the specific act of dream interpretation? No. Pharaoh had other advisors. There were other people who could interpret dreams. What was irreplaceable was Joseph, the person who had been formed by 13 years of betrayal, slavery, and imprisonment, and had not become bitter, had not let go of his gift, had not surrendered his character to the crushing weight of his circumstances. The palace needed that specific person, and the interpretation was simply the moment that person became visible to the person who had the power to open the door. It was not the act. It was the person who had become capable of the act. Think about Esther. What made her the one for that moment? Was it just the fact that she happened to be in the palace? No, there were others in that palace. What could not be replaced was who Esther had become through years of being hidden, of learning to move in a world that was not originally hers, of developing the kind of wisdom and courage that only come from navigating a long season of in-between. She had been formed for that corridor, not because of one dramatic decision, because of all the invisible ones that came before it. And think about Ruth. She spent her days gleaning in a field, doing the quiet, unglamorous work of survival. She was not performing faithfulness for an audience. She was simply being who she was: loyal, consistent, present in a season that gave her very little visible reason to keep going. And Boaz noticed her not because of one dramatic moment, but because of the testimony of her character, accumulated across ordinary days that no one had marked on a calendar. None of them did one great thing. All of them became one great person, and the sacred responded to the person, not just the moment. That is the pattern, and you are in it. Now let me give you 2 things to carry with you from today. The first is what I want you to do each morning, not as a long ritual, not as a performance, just 30 seconds before the day layers itself on top of everything. Take a breath and say this inwardly, simply and honestly. Something is moving on my behalf in the unseen. I do not need to see it to receive it. I am open. That is it. 30 seconds. A quiet, daily act of keeping the door open, of saying to what is working underground, I know you are there. I am not closing. The second is an identity anchor. There are 4 things that are true about who you are right now, and I want you to choose the one you most need to hear in this season and speak it once a day, out loud if you can, silently if you cannot. Not because saying it makes it true, it is already true. But the unworthiness belief is loud, and it needs to be answered. If you are in a season of confusion, anchor yourself in this: I see what others cannot yet see. That is not a burden, that is a gift. If you are in a season of pain and wondering whether any of it had a purpose, anchor yourself in this: what I have been through is becoming medicine. Nothing was wasted. If the old patterns are trying to reassert themselves, anchor yourself in this: this stops with me. I am the change in the line. If you are holding back your voice because you do not feel ready, anchor yourself in this: I speak from where I have been, and that is enough. You do not manufacture what heaven has already released. You simply stop blocking it. Chosen one, Before I let you go, I want to do something with you that feels right for this moment. Let us receive what we walked through today. I want to take a moment and simply acknowledge where you have been, the nights that did not have answers, the prayers that felt like they dissolved before they reached the ceiling, the seasons that required more from you than you thought you had available, the moments of faithfulness that no one saw and no one applauded, that you have sometimes wondered whether they counted at all. They counted, every single one. And together, let us say thank you to something larger and wiser than our circumstances for being present through all of it, not absent in the silence, present, holding, watching, working in the places we could not see. Thank you for the wilderness that built what the promised land requires. Thank you for the hiding that prepared the revealing. Thank you for the pressure that is still in the process of making something that could not have been made any other way. And we acknowledge what was seen, every choice made in private, every quiet act of faithfulness, every moment of holding on when letting go would have been easier, every prayer said without certainty, every yes that cost something real, every no that protected something worth protecting. All of it was seen, all of it registered, none of it dissolved into silence. You have been fully seen, and now we let some things go. We release the story that says we are too small for what has been activated. Release it. We release the old ceiling we have been calling the sky. Release it. We release the fear that the silence means no. Release it. We release the habit of dismissing our own significance before anyone else can. Release it. We release the comparison to timelines that were never ours to carry. Release it. We release the need for external confirmation before we allow ourselves to receive. Release it. We release every layer of the unworthiness belief that has been quietly editing the evidence of what God has been doing in our lives. Release it. It goes now. And in the space that remains, we call forth what is already ours. We call forth the seer's perception, sharp, grounded, and ready to recognize what others walk past. We call forth the wounded healer's gift, fully alive now, no longer buried under the weight of the pain it was formed through. We call forth the cycle breaker's authority, firm, clear, and walking forward as the one who ends what ends and begins what begins. We call forth the voice present, unafraid, and ready to speak what only this specific life has earned the right to carry. We activate the divine connections aligned with this new season, the right people arriving at the right time, drawn not by what we perform, but by who we are. We open the doors that were held closed by a belief too small to be allowed to stay any longer, and we cover what has been opened. We protect what is being built from being exposed before it is ready. We guard the rising from the part of us that has, in the past, found a way to sabotage the good when the good finally arrived. That pattern does not move into the next season. It stops here. Now let these words land as declarations, not as wishes, not as things you hope will be true someday. I am the seer. I carry what others cannot yet carry. I see what others cannot yet see. I am the wounded healer. My pain was not wasted. It is becoming medicine for people I have not even met yet. I am the cycle breaker. What came before ends with me. What comes next begins with me. I am the voice. I was formed for this, and I am ready. Something was activated in me today. I receive it. I will not disqualify myself from it. I will not close the door that has been opened. I will not shrink back to the size that felt safer than this. It is done. It is sealed. And we receive it. Amen. If something landed today, if any part of this touched something real in you, I want to ask you to do one thing. Go to the comments right now and type the word activated, not for me, as a declaration for yourself. Let it be the first act of receiving what has been released over your life today. And if you know someone in a quiet season, someone who has been faithful in ways that no one is noticing, someone who needs to hear that they are not invisible, send this to them. You do not have to explain it, just send it. Something in them will know why it arrived when it did. For those who felt something when I mentioned the Genius song, the 7-minute brain entrainment track that supports the kind of gamma-level reception we talked about earlier. The only link to the authentic version is in the description and in the pinned comment below. There are imitations out there that carry the name, but not the science. The version with the full technology, the 4 bonuses, and the complete money-back guarantee is available only through the link I have placed there. If you feel called to it, it is there for you. Go gently, chosen one. Go gently. And know today counted.